We'll be back after station identification. This is Franklin Public Radio.
If you enjoy gardening, get to know your friends at the Franklin Garden Club. Learn more. Become a member. Send an email to franklingardenclubma@gmail.com.
All set, Amy? Chris, you all set?
Yep.
Everybody good? Okay, welcome, everybody. Welcome to the Franklin Planning Board, March 13th, 2023 meeting. This meeting is audio and video recorded. It's also on Zoom. The Zoom number itself is 312-626-6799. Meeting number is 874-128-40778. Our first item of business, we'll do general business first, which would be a decision for Prospect Hill definitive subdivision. I guess we'll go to Amy, Department of Planning first, real quick, if you could kind of enlighten everybody on this one.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Planning Board closed the public hearing on February 27, 2023. I've included in this packet a draft decision with the conditions, including the judgment that came through Land Court. There are 2 waivers that the board would need to vote on tonight, as well as making a decision on the subdivision.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to waive on the waivers?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to vote on the following waivers. 310B 4B, roads shall not provide access to undeveloped land in other towns, and 310B 4D, roads right of way, including cul-de-sacs, will be set back at least 25 feet from town lines.
Okay. Do I hear a second on it? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman,
Then-
make a motion to include the following conditions of approval. Roadway will always remain private and be maintained by homeowners, and town of Franklin will never have any responsibility to maintain it. And to implement condition number 1, developer will execute a private road covenant with town and establish a homeowners association, both documents to be recorded.
Okay. Do I hear a second? All in favor? Aye.
And Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve with conditions and waivers the Prospect Hill Estates subdivision.
Second, do I hear?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we'll go to our public hearing for zoning amendment 23-889, multifamily density.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to waive the public hearing notice.
So, all in favor? Aye. I guess we'll go to Amy first from Department of Planning.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This hearing and the next hearing actually kind of coincide with each other. So,
Do you want me to make a motion to waive the reading for zoning amendment 23-890, so we can talk about them both at the same time?
Yep.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
okay, thank you.
Thank you, Amy.
So DPCD has been working many years on trying to establish some inclusionary zoning and also change some of the density within our C1 district, as well as our downtown, our GR5 district. This has been in front of EDC for several meetings, and what it really entails is complying with one thing, our Franklin for All study, some recommendations that had involved our Franklin for All study, and it's also involving the MBTA community requirements, the 3A compliance that's coming up in the next year or two. So what the first, if I can go to 23-890, is the adding a chapter 185, section 51 for inclusionary zoning. This defines what inclusionary zoning is. The proposal being any multi-family residential units of 10 or more would require 10% affordable housing. The affordable housing inquires the SHI guidelines of who would afford for, who would qualify to rent or buy the affordable housing units. It also provides kind of a schedule of when they construct the units, how often that the affordable units come up, so you don't wait to the very end of the project. It shows that, you know, if you have 30% constructed, you add 1 unit, up to 50%, you have 30%. So this provides that information within this chapter. It talks about the resale as well, the restrictions of the resale, that this will be in perpetuity, so this will last from the day it's built, so it doesn't exist. So it does stay on our SHI as well. So that's the first part of our inclusionary zoning. It applies to only, I just want to say only the multifamily of 10 or more units. So anything under 10 or more units does not apply for affordable housing, and it does apply for sales or rental.
Good, thank you.
Do you want, you guys, questions, or you want
I think,
address this first?
yeah. Go to 889, and then maybe, does anybody have any comments or questions in reference to the changes in the bylaws?
Summarize the next one too and talk about them all at the same time.
Yeah, if you want, yeah.
Okay, we'll move on to the next one. So the second one is actually 23-889, and this is by right multifamily housing in C1 in general residential 5. It's been talked about for a long time. It also changes the density. We originally had up to, downtown commercial is up to 2,000 square feet per area, but C1 and GR5 is 1,000 square feet per unit, per area. So this actually adds in where we added the 4 more housing units by right. Some of them with the restriction of having the inclusionary zoning, as well as taking away the 1,000 square feet and adding 2,250 square feet of lot area permitted. We also included the multifamily developments with 10 or more. That applies to the C1 district and the GR5 district. A lot of this was hashed out in many meetings at EDC. I don't know if all 7 members were in agreement of any of this. They each had their own opinion. I think all of this kind of came down to a compromise of trying to figure out what's going to be best for these zoning districts, as well as what's best for the town of Franklin to comply with the MBTA compliance, and also really reducing a little bit of the density to not have so much density in some of these areas at 1,000 square feet. So these are the 2 amendments that are being proposed in front of the board. The planning board has, I guess, a determination to recommend as is, to recommend with changes, or to not recommend at all to town council. So that's the board's decision.
Okay, good, thank you very much, Amy. Guess we'll go to the board first. Anybody have any questions or comments in reference? Kathy, if you want to go?
As you mentioned, Amy, there were a ton of meetings on this through the EDC, and I don't think any of us really ever fully agreed on everything. And that's why I have the question I have. So currently, our density in the C1 and GR5 is what?
1,000 square feet per
1,000?
unit.
Okay, so that's, oops. Okay, so the density is pretty pretty significant, and we're looking to change it to
2,000.
2,000.
250.
2,250, correct.
Okay, so we're essentially dividing it in half.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm gonna be 100% honest, I still have a hard time with 22 units an acre, or 20 units an acre. I personally feel as though it should stay at what was originally recommended by the planning department, which was it? About 15 units an acre at 27.5 or 27.50.
Yeah, that's what it was,
Yeah.
2750, that was the original presented to EDC.
Yeah, which would be about 15, 16 units an acre. That's my personal opinion. I just think that there is a provision in this to allow for more units by special permit from the planning board. So I think the span in which we're looking at, it should be specific, and we should really have the option to review it as a special permit if the density is going to be greater than 15 units an acre. So I think you can get some pretty significant density in areas. And if this goes through, I believe people will start combining properties, and you're just going to end up with some pretty big developments. So I'd rather see us have the ability as a community to review something at 15 units an acre with the option to increase it on a case-by-case manner. That's how I feel. Inclusionary zoning, I'd like to, I know we need to move it forward, and I know we need to get to a point where everybody agrees, but I think 10 units is pretty high, and I'd like to see it a little lower, maybe to 8 units, but if there's no compromise, then 10 units is 10 units. But I think 1 unit, a developer can put 1 unit in something that is 8 units or more. It's not a big deal, in my opinion. It's for our community. That's pretty much how I feel about that. My only other comment is, I see that from the original proposal, that 3 family housing units in the single family 4 was changed to be a special permit through the planning board, and I'm happy with that change.
Any, sure, Rick?
Amy, what happens if the town decides not to conform with the MBTA requirements?
If we don't conform with them, we will not qualify for grants. The one-stop grant, the housing grants. I can tell you, I think in the past 2 years, we've gotten over $6 million in grants. So we will not be able to apply for those grants if we do not.
Is there a project that you can mention that, right?
Grove Street. So we
Street.
got over $2 million from the
lights and
one-stop
everything?
grant. The whole, the lights
Paving.
and paving is one of them. DPW might have gotten some more grants, but there's definitely a lot of grants that we've gotten through.
So that's significant.
The housing, I think we
Yep.
just got a grant also to try to help out Franklin Ridge with the water or sewer station to pump that up towards for the proposal for Franklin Ridge. We got that, I think we got over $1 million for that one. So you're not allowed to apply for, or you won't qualify for any of the grants if we don't comply with MBTA.
My second question is, when you had all the Franklin for All meetings and customer feedback and the survey and all that stuff, the customer feedback, resident feedback, what was the general tone of the feedback? Were most people in favor of it? Or was it 50-50, or was it?
In favor of what?
Of these types of zoning changes, density changes?
So I don't think the survey included, these specific zoning
No,
changes.
I talked about the
They
general,
definitely wanted less housing.
but we're going ahead as a town and saying we want more housing. It's a conflict, in my opinion. It's an election year.
Mhm.
I'm kidding.
But
No, it's a little,
But it also
is.
takes a unit per 1,000 to become now 2250, so it tightened up that line. So it
Yes.
made it stricter to build, it's not as, we can do 44 units per acre right now under the current zoning.
what would it have done to this place across the street where Honeydew is? Would it have
What
changed that?
Yep.
It would have put them down at 20.
It would've, so the 2250 is based on per unit, so it knocks that number of units down, which is, yeah, you're encouraging more housing, but you're encouraging more housing on, smaller scale per se.
Okay, thanks.
Just to kind of comment on what you're asking, so that building across the street would have been knocked down to 20, but they could have applied for a special permit for more units, which would have given us some ability to review it as what should have fit on that property.
Right.
Versus by right,
By right.
starting with more.
Right, by right.
Right,
Yep.
and then not having the ability to
Yep.
cater to what might be
Appropriate.
uniquely appropriate for each individual site.
There's no adjustments or changes for parking or height of the buildings or any of that stuff on here, right?
No, they'll still have to meet all the
We
rules
still
and
have- so
regs.
we still
Yeah.
have the ability to
Yep.
change those.
Really? Good comment? Huh? Jay? No? Jen?
Sorry,
No.
since this is the first meeting in which we're reviewing this in a public hearing, can we have opportunity to continue the conversation, or do we have to make any sort of decision tonight?
We don't have to make a decision tonight, but this is something that the town wants to, move forward with, so I think we probably have, one meeting that we can contend with? But we'll have to make reaction for the next one, I believe.
Yeah, so but when we post the public hearing, I posted it for tonight for planning board. I think town council is April 12th, I believe, so they're about a month away. So I think if there's it's good to have this meeting tonight if we're gonna continue it, but any questions that arise, any things that I need to bring back to, whether it's town attorney or Brian Taberner, whichever one, with questions would be helpful, just to get feedback from all members, to kind of move this forward. Like if there are any concerns, tonight that, and as a recommendation, like I said, it was talked heavily at Economic Development Committee. I went back and forth. I mean, I think we started off with 4 affordable units, and we got to 12. We started off with 2,750 square feet per unit, and dropped down to the 2,250. So there's kind of been a lot of back and forth with this whole plan itself in front of us.
Yeah, and-
So
and-
as far as, like, any concerns or comments, if you guys want to address them tonight, or you need to the next meeting, that's fine too.
Yep. And I just want to take to Jen's point, the steering committee was consistent of zoning, planning board, town council. So there was a lot of different people involved in it, so I think to come to the compromise, I think it took a lot, it took us a while to get there. And there was a lot of back and forth. So I think what we have in front of us is based on what we're hearing from everybody else and all the other boards as well, in terms of what they're pushing for and what they're hearing from the residents as well. So that's just, probably could tweak it again, but we gotta be careful if we try to adjust it too much, because it may get pushed back. So I just wanna be careful with that, that's all.
Jen, is there a specific question you had, or a comment, or?
No, I mean, you gave your viewpoint, Beth, and I agree. I would err on the side of maybe slightly more conservative with the ability to increase via special permit versus being more aggressive with what's allowable by right in sort of any scenario, whether we're talking about density or what's allowable. But I also understand the need to increase housing in town and increase the amount of affordable housing in town for sure. I feel like we should be as aggressive with that as possible. You gave your opinion sort of to us as a representative on the EDC. Greg, you were on the board as well, right? So what's your general take on where we've arrived in these.
I kind of think where we are is where we probably need to be, because there's also one bearing factor is all the lots that are gonna come up in front of us are gonna be irregularly shaped. So it's gonna be even more difficult to build on it. So that means therefore, they're gonna be a lower number, because you had the sideline variances, they're not all rectangular or square lots. So now you have irregular lots coming in, so therefore the sideline variance is gonna suck it in. It's gonna close in the amount of units, I believe, based on what we have. That's why we went back and forth so much on the state was mandating 2750, and we came up with the conclusion that it was 2250 as a compromise amongst all of us, because that was a big sticking point. Unit per square footage. So, but the problem is Brian actually gave us a schematic of a lot, and with a building on it, yeah. And he gave it as a proposal, as this is what will work based on with pavement, sideline variances, et cetera, et cetera. So we thought possibly this would be the best route. You know, based on the square footages of the lots that are coming in front of us, that's all. And yeah, nobody took this light-handedly, you know, it was a compromise, I think, between all the boards and all the people on the board that came up with it, so,
Mr. Chairman, I
Yep.
just want to point out, that diagram is the original proposal that shows the 27,
yeah.
Right, so
Yeah.
it'd be
So it's
more-
very limited.
so, but if we're dropping it down, it's going
Right,
to
it'd be
be
bigger.
bigger.
Right.
Yeah, so,
It won't be as much green.
yep.
Yeah.
But, but what I was getting to, and Brian was saying the same thing, and I was looking to see if he was online or not, but the irregular lot is gonna create a little bit of a havoc for the guys trying to put it together, actually, because it's not a perfectly square lot, so they're gonna end up coming down a little bit, I think, based on sideline variances, actually, unless you have an odd-shaped building, you know?
Well, I mean, every lot is uniquely different, and I think the point is that, you know, with each unique lot, instead of squeezing it in by right, it's now starting with a more aggressive allowance and not having any ability to
Yeah.
say it must be smaller versus the other way around.
Yeah, I think it's just my opinion, I think it'll work itself out with the configuration of the lots. That's a perfect lot, if you wanna look at it building-wise. There aren't many of those. And the sidelines are gonna create the sidelines, the front, the impervious, all that's gonna create what's gonna be left behind for the lot. That's all. That's why we kinda went back and forth so much with the amount of square footage there, from the 27 down. I mean, a couple members wanted 1,000 still, 2,000, 2750,
Mr.
so.
Chairman, I'm curious, the other two planning board members, what their thoughts are. So,
Yeah.
you know, if
Yeah.
we're heading towards a direction where the majority of people like what's in here, then continuing it really is not really a,
I was gonna give it.
just curious what
Yeah.
they're can.
I mean, you guys comfortable with what's in front? I mean,
Jim, can I
Yeah, yeah. Again, this is not what's
Yeah.
being proposed,
So-
that's
Right.
what
so
was previously
think it through.
recommended.
Let me go to the audience.
questions too.
Oh, you do? Go ahead, Jay.
So I just want to make sure I understand this process correctly. So the ultimate decision on this is going to fall at town council, correct?
Correct.
So we're acting in an advisory capacity.
Yep.
And the bylaw as currently stipulated falls within the recommendations based on the state? Correct?
Yes,
Correct.
yes.
Was that determined? Yes, it was.
By the state,
Yeah.
yes.
So that's a whole lot of grant money for us to lose, to
That-
not, you know. fall in
6
line with
million's a
that.
lot.
Well,
Yeah,
I
well,
think-
it's spread over a few years, and then like some, obviously you have peak grant years, and you have low
Sure.
grant years, so average it out, say you really would lose like $500,000 a year, that's a lot for municipal budget. Do you have any other sense, Amy, of what might be coming down through the pike for the state if we don't do this? Because I have a feeling that's not the last thing.
So, okay, so I can't, this meets the guidelines, not to say that this is going to completely meet, we need, 1,883 units per the MBT compliance. I'm not gonna say that this change is going to get us there 100%. We're still working out the numbers, there's still models. There's also new government in place. If anything changes, we have 2 years. We have to comply by December of 2024. So I'm not going to say that this is our resolution, but this is a direction that the town's been planning to go in for years, and it does meet the model. Not to say if we can meet the unit count with this, we may or we may not. We're still working on those numbers. So these regulations would comply.
So what I'm saying is, if we were to choose to not comply, what else is gonna happen to the town besides the loss of grant money? Because that's not gonna be the only thing.
Mr. Chairman, may I just, Jay, I don't think we're saying not to comply.
I thought you were arguing against it.
No, this is increasing from what complies is 15 units an acre. This is increasing it to 20 units an acre. So what we originally proposed complied. And
Oh,
we're making
okay.
it denser. Yeah, I'm not
I
saying
I thought you were
absolutely, no,
trying
no,
to
no,
lower
no.
below
I'm
that.
not saying
I was
not to
like,
comply.
let's not be going down
Nope.
this road.
No, 100%
Oh, okay.
support complying.
Thank
Nope.
you. That's all my questions.
No, I'm just saying, why don't we
Sorry about
comply
that.
at 15
Yeah.
units an acre instead of complying at 20 units an acre?
Well, it sounds like we still have to meet
It-
the secondary requirement that increasing the density might help us.
And I think this will help with the master plan committee coming too, because this will be some of the guidelines that they're gonna fall within too, with the setting up that as well, so. But I do see Brian in Zoom land, and I'd like to see if Brian could, voice his opinion on where we're at.
Hi there. Good evening. Hi,
Can't hear you.
Brian
Muted,
Saberner.
Brian.
Okay, hold on.
Muted?
He's not muted.
He's not.
The main screen is muted for some reason.
I believe I can.
He told me to keep it muted.
Hold on one sec, Brian. Can you hear us?
Yeah.
It's super, super, super light.
Or does it? What?
Try it now, Brian?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, Brian,
Okay.
I'd like to see if you could just chime in on trying to close us in and where we've been and where we're going with this as well.
All right, sure. I'm sorry I was late. I didn't hear everything that was said, but I did hear what Amy mentioned about MBTA, Section 3A compliance, things of that nature. So it is true that we are supposed to have zoning in place within a half a mile of the MBTA station that has a gross density of at least 15 units by right. So if you changed it to 15, that's not 15 gross density, so you need more. I think the 19 to 20 or whatever it is that the current proposal is will meet our needs. And Amy did mention that because we still don't know, because the model, we have Metropolitan Area Planning Council working with the model that Department of Housing and Community Development provided, and they were coming up short. So we have a little bit of work to do on that. But I do believe one way or another, what we're proposing gets us going in the right direction. I don't recommend going with a higher density allowed by right, because I think then you'll have a lot of general residential 5 will become it won't be a neighborhood anymore. It'll be housing developments, and I think that that's not what our town is looking for. I think this is it's good for developers in that they know what they can get by right, and they don't have to go through a special permit process. But if they want more of density, if they want to get, say, 25 per acre or whatever, they can go to you for a special permit. You still have that option. So I think that's the key. Now, as far as the inclusionary zoning, you don't need one until you get to that 10th housing unit. So that's a big deal. We were previous versions. We actually had the housing development didn't need to be nearly that big before it kicked in. So, and we're only requiring 10%. One of the reasons is the MBTA regulations, or the guidance that Department of Housing and Community Development is giving us is that they'll only allow up to 10% in an area around the MBTA. So we would have liked to get a little bit more, but I guess that comes right down to it. The version that's in front of you tonight is a compromise in many ways. It gives us inclusionary zoning for the bigger developments, and it gives us much of what we need for the density for the MBTA communities. And the other thing is, it does give a developer, they don't have to go through the special permit process in the C1 and in the general residential 5 areas like they do now. As long as they don't have as long as they keep it under that, was it 2,250 or whatever the square footage that it came down to per unit. So if there are any specific questions?
Clarification.
Yeah, I think Beth has a question.
So Brian, if I heard you correctly, in order to comply with MBTA communities, while the base is 15 units an acre, we won't comply unless we utilize what's in front of us now due to the gross density, is that what you said? Which needs to be more aligned with 20 units an acre.
Yeah, I mean, the model that Department of Housing and Community Development set up, I think it's much more complicated than it really has to be. But it needs to be 15 per acre in a gross density, meaning you eliminate areas that are not developable and a variety of other things. The way we've done our math, I think we do pretty well by what we have. The way the model comes up with, which we will continue to go back and forth with until we actually, I think it works in our favor. Either way, these two zoning districts are not going to be all that we need to do to meet the MBTA requirements. So this is giving us a good chunk of what is required, but we need to, the other zoning districts are important also. So we have to, these two never would have given us what we needed unless we were substantially higher density than what we're proposing. So
the MBTA communities includes downtown commercial, C1, and GR5, correct? Just making sure I have all the zones. And
the downtown, yes, the downtown commercial is one of the zones that we need. But one thing that is interesting is that Department of Housing and Community Development stated that we could have to allow housing on the first floor in the downtown commercial zone for us to count that district, which is something that I don't believe we should be allowed to, and I'm going to fight it until we can't fight it anymore, because we don't want somebody ripping down a block of downtown and putting it up an apartment building with no commercial, no mixed use. I mean, it's bad planning, and Department of Housing and Community Development must know that, but they're allowing this, they're requiring the first floor housing, multifamily. So I guess I didn't want to overcomplicate your meeting tonight. What we have is what we believe is the best interest of the town to get us going in the right direction. And it allows developers to know what they can do by right, and what if they want a larger one, what they'll need to do to get a special. they need to get a special permit to get the larger. So,
So, Brian, just real quick, just because if this does go to recommendation, this can be readdressed as time goes too. This is just setting the stone where we want to be at a certain, point in time at this point. So-
my thought is that we should have done this 5 or 10 years ago, and built upon it and made tweaks and everything. We have to start somewhere in our changes. Where right now we allowing multifamily in those 2 districts by special permit is a challenge. It is challenging, I think the allowing by right up to a certain size is extremely important. Whether we had the MBTA requirements or not, I think that this was something we needed to do a long time ago. So, and I think inclusionary zoning, even though we're only requiring 10% over a certain size development, I think that we needed to do that a long time ago also. So some of the more recent multifamily developments that did not have any affordable, they would have had at least 10% of affordable, and we would have more housing choices for the people that are living around here. So,
Okay, good. Thank you, Brian. Go ahead.
Through the chair. I totally agree. I think the inclusionary zoning thing is a huge win. I'd like us to be as aggressive as possible. I guess my concern generally in looking at our zoning map is the general residential 5 and really significant neighborhoods that have been a part of the fabric of the town of Franklin, houses that are from 1900 that are embedded in, surrounded by similar style houses, now all of a sudden by right being allowed to be knocked down and to make way for more significant, more dense multi-family development. And I just hate to see the character of some of those neighborhoods in particular, not necessarily downtown, not necessarily commercial 1, but general residential 5, in the way that the zoning map currently exists, and what it's surrounded by. That's what concerns me. So, for what it's worth, I don't know. Has there been any, as a part of the zoning changes or effort in conjunction with what's being proposed tonight, of looking at redefining any of the zoning areas themselves on the map, or is everything being proposed to stay the same?
Brian, you want to answer that one?
I'd be happy to. I myself would like to see residential 4 divide into 2 or 3 different sub-districts, and residential 5 could be done the same way. That way, allowed density shouldn't be townwide for sure, but it also general residential 5. Some of it, maybe it should be denser, allow a denser area in part of it, but not as much in others.
Yep.
Maybe we should extend residential 5 into residential 4 a little bit in certain areas. I can think of a couple areas that it might be advantageous to the people that actually own the properties and live there also, where they're very short walk in some areas to the train station but we won't allow the multifamily in those zones, special permit or not. I mean, we just don't allow it. But so I think that maybe allowing the master plan process, which will be starting in a few months, to take a very, very hardcore look at zoning changes like that. I think that's a very appropriate thing to do. I struggled for years just to get us to look at the C1 and general residential 5 density issues and the fact that they always had to be a special permit. So, I mean, it's not easy. It's not easy, and you need people to advocate for certain zoning changes if that's what is wanted. So, to answer your question, I think we should look at all of those things during the master plan process.
Thank you.
Jay, did you have a question?
Yeah, I had a question. I'm sorry, the mouse is chasing the cheese a little slow tonight. When we were referring to the square footage before, it was 2,200 feet, that was per unit? As in, the size of the unit is 2,200 feet?
No,
Or it
no,
means
that-
2,200 feet in the
The
lot?
density of the lot in reference, so it's, right now, it's 1,000, and it's actually going up to 2,250 per unit per lot,
Per acre.
per acre.
I'd have to sit here and do the math on that. Like I said.
So basically, what Brian was saying, I think we figured out the last time, it breaks down to approximately 19 units per acre at the 2,250. That's taken into consideration, right, Amy, if I'm correct? That takes into consideration the impervious, the sidelines, that's pretty much like this schematic actually showed, but
Yeah.
like I said, this is a perfect building lot in the eyes of the beholder, so, it ups the amount of square footage required.
Do you mind if I pose a question to the audience?
Absolutely.
Mr. Builder guy,
Mr. Builder guy.
what does that mean in terms of the size of a unit? How big is that unit?
Brad, you just want to come up?
For kids, not
I
yet.
was gonna say, I'm using stuff this size. We have all kinds of keyboards at our house. Brad Chaffee, Camper Property Group. We are a builder developer in Franklin. On the small size of what we're talking, we don't necessarily do large developments, but kind of in the 10 to 15 unit size. I guess to answer your question, Jay. So if we wanted to sneak, we have a couple lots in the center of town we're actually looking at right now for this. You would be on the to Mr. Rondo's point, we are dealing with very odd shaped lots, ledge, sometimes it has wetlands in it. That's what's left. That's what you're gonna build on. I know there's a development across the street that got approved. That's probably the last square lot you'll ever see. I don't even know if there's another one. So this is not that easy to do with the way that things are right now written. You're on a very small scale, so if you go to like an apartment size, you're gonna be, to get, I'll say, in a half-acre lot, which is more realistic in these zones, you're gonna get 8 units,
How
10
big
units.
is that unit?
They're gonna be small, 800 to 1,000, which is okay for apartments.
Perfect.
But if you want ownership, that's too small. So
Yeah.
now we're getting back into rentals and sales. And you're not gonna, if you want people to be part of the downtown fabric, you're not gonna be able to build a 1,500 square foot 2-bedroom or a 1,200. That's when it gets even harder. So they're smaller units. That's really what's gonna end up doing.
The top floor in my home is 1,100 square feet, and it's basically the prime of my living space, so I think that is right on point, 1,000. I was making sure that we weren't,
My concern, right, is that basically we're looking to try to put in, I mean, I would buy something 1,100 square feet. I've never lived in anything bigger in Franklin. I own a home. So if that's what it's gonna mean for density, if we're looking at 800 to, 1,000 square foot units, I think that's about appropriate. That's more the way I'm
Sure.
thinking of is like the square foot required for the unit. and
Yep.
all that
Yep.
stuff. So, no, I think it's about right on point. Thank you for your input.
Yeah.
Comment
Beth?
on that. Brad, don't go yet.
Sure.
So, you mentioned you have a couple lots, you're looking at it downtown, and if developed, it would afford an 8 or 9 unit, which means we get no inclusionary zoning, we get no units, because
Right.
that's the kind of housing developer we're going to look at. So that's why I'm saying, I think we should consider a lower number, because we're not gonna get anything out of this. To Brad's point, you have lots that can't support a larger building. So what, as a town, are we getting out of it if we're including it at 10 units or more? The developer's going to be able to skirt right by, build their 8 or 9 units.
Can-
Sorry, town, you get nothing.
Can I answer that, Rob? Can I have a
Sure.
word?
That's that higher density.
So just to get into that, inclusionary zoning this is a boutique size, when we get down to this. As we all know, these are few far in between. The town's, 1 unit a year, 1 unit every other year. You have something that comes on Grove Street, which is gonna be in front of the town, people are talking about that, you're gonna get 30, 40 at a whack. It's gonna take 50 years to do that in the center of town. That's what the town gets the affordabilities. So when you get into small boutique-y stuff, it's crumbs. It's not helping anything. When you get into larger developments, you're getting more than decades of it at one shot. The town gets all this stuff, so it's just hard, but you're also, those developers are big companies. You guys have talked to Fairfield, they have billions in assets and holdings. You guys should be leaning on them to get more out of them, instead of local developers that are really people that build houses, build a couple million families. That's what you're trying to squeeze one or two out. And even when you get into that pricing of it, I still don't think, so some of our apartments that are old that we renovate are a few $100s less a month than the state. So the state's inclusionary zoning of what you get for a rental is more money and is not affordable. A two-family is $2,300 by the state. That's an affordable unit in Franklin. We build brand new, that's what you get. We have ones downtown that we fix, $1,700, $1,800 a unit. That's real, and that's market. That's what people do with existing stuff, what banks do and all that. The state is expensive because we get tied in with Boston. So that's the reality of it.
Just gonna comment that I respect what you're saying,
Yep.
Brad, 100% hear you. My perspective is, I don't necessarily want a 300 unit apartment
I agree with
building
that
in order
too,
to get
yeah.
30 affordable units. That's my point.
Right.
Right.
Nope, I agree. I would not like to see those big ones.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just want to approach the mic, please?
Hi, Pat Gallagher. I'm at 2 Cohasset Way, a real estate and development attorney, Goulston and Storrs. I'm also chair of the Conservation Commission. Not here on behalf of any project, not here on behalf of the Concom, but just wanted to weigh in and kind of build on that point. I represent a lot of the types of developers who are doing the 200 and 300 unit projects. I also represent a lot of developers who are doing 10 and 15 and 20 unit projects in Boston. And granted, construction in Boston is different than out here. But adding an affordable unit to a 6 or 7 or an 8 unit project, in my experience, is simply not financeable. And I think that's the challenge that you run into if you're requiring a lower threshold to trigger the affordability requirement. I just think, it's important to balance how are you getting to the affordable units, and by putting in a lower threshold, are you risking, the prospect of any sort of development under this no zoning, because having that affordable unit in there and having to underwrite that as part of the project, I think it just becomes very difficult. And I think the focus should be on the lowercase affordability. And I think you get that not necessarily in the SHI listed units, but the more units you are able to develop, that puts downward pressure, that opens up opportunities for folks who are trying to get these units, whether they're moving out of a larger house that they don't need or trying to get into the community. I think you get that lowercase affordability by upzoning like we're talking about here. So I just want to keep that in mind, that I think, and I do a lot of LIHTC projects, affordable housing. It's very important to me. But I don't want the kind of perfect year to be the enemy of anything actually being developed under this. And I think we just have to be cognizant of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yep.
Can I go now?
Yep, you can, but to your point, we did talk about that quite a bit, that threshold, 8, 9, 10, 12, 15. That was talked about for quite a while with all of us, so I can't stress how long we talked about it, but 10 was the, okay, but yes, thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Yes,
Chairman.
Madam Chair.
Hi, everybody. My name is Melanie Hamblin. I live at 70 Daniel Street. I'm on the town council, the chair of the Economic Development Subcommittee, and the chair of the Franklin for All Steering Committee. I just wanted to mention a couple of things first. I wrote a bunch of stuff down, but I'm going to try not to go to it, but I probably will. First, we started in 2019 for the MAPC did an economic development study, and it was obvious that people want more housing. So that was where, that's why we did the Franklin for All project, to figure out how can we rezone things so we really boost downtown and get more housing, more people walking, make it a walkable downtown. And so it started in 2019 with that study. And these are the changes that are before you, the additions and everything, are just the beginning of some of the things that we've been discussing at in the Franklin for All project. So hopefully you'll be seeing a few more meetings like this with the same people here to advocate for them. So as it has been stated multiple times, we discussed this for a long time. I mean, the Franklin for All project is, I think, about 15 months long now. And we took into account what people said, what they did in this, what people wanted, what they said in the survey, what they wanted, through our discussions with developers and the, was there, Amy, there was a, there were different meetings you had, like smaller meetings with developers and people that live downtown.
We had focus groups.
So there were multiple focus groups. And so all that is part of this, as well as the MBTA community guidelines and the housing production plan. So all of this has kind of guided us to what you have in front of you tonight. I would say that we agreed unanimously to move this forward. We didn't all agree on every single vote we took, right? So, but we all agreed that this is what we needed to do for Franklin. So I have a whole ton of points, but I'm gonna try to narrow it down to 3 that we can talk about. Because of the work on this Franklin for All's plan, the action plan for Franklin's community, MBTA community, has been approved till 2024. To the end of 2024, which is huge. I mean, we talked about that a little bit already, right? So that means that Franklin can continue to apply for and receive MassWork grants. And why is that important? Because in the last 4 years, Franklin has gotten almost $7 million to do work like, I wrote down the number for us, $3.2 million in the Grove Street improvement. That's huge. Franklin Ridge Affordable Senior Housing, $3.75 million. $500,000 for the pump station for the DPW. MassWorks grant was only about streets, but now it's evolved into everything. So it's really important for us to be able to get these grants. 2, as we save open space, which is a huge concern in the town, we still have to allow for new growth. Especially in areas that are already have infrastructure. So we don't add to the burden of the DPW's budget. So I don't know if anybody watched the joint budget subcommittee meeting that was last week. We're facing a $5.7 million deficit in our 2024 budget right now. And new growth has slowed down. And we rely on new growth for our budget to pay for all the things we love here in the town, right? I'm like, where did I write it next? All right, so how do we do that? We allow increased density, incremental increased density. We allow building by right, so the builders know what to expect, and we make it more affordable for the builders to build. We loosen up the regulations and allow natural growth. So that's kind of where we're headed. And hopefully the accessory dwelling unit piece of this will come before you soon. We're going to have a big meeting on the 22nd if anybody wants to pay attention and listen to us. The inclusionary zoning bylaw, all right, 10% of 10 units. That's a standard, it's a goal to make sure that if anybody builds more, we always have another unit built. If we start too high, then we won't get enough units built, and we won't be able to be above the 10%, stay above the 10%. If we start too low, it could stagnate growth, and we've already talked about what stagnating growth is going to do to the budget, right? So, through the Franklin for All project, we also found out that people really like 2, 3, up to 12 unit buildings. They're okay. They like Mr. Chafee's building with a commercial down in the floor, 12 units up above. That's okay. And that's the kind of stuff people want to see downtown. So I'm going to leave it at that, but thank you for giving me the time to speak. And thank both the chair and the clerk for participating in the steering committee meetings. It's been great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Good.
I think that we should make a vote to make a motion to move both proposals forward, zoning bylaw 23889 and 23890 to town council as recommended.
Okay. Here a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Do we need to close the public hearing
Make a
first?
motion to close the
Uh,
public
We
ma-
need to close the public hearing.
Shut down. Make a motion to close the public hearing.
Is this, wait,
Oh,
what
We,
comment?
we just need to close the public hearings for both of those. That's okay.
no, yeah, you know. No,
I see no hand up.
there's no hand up.
Yep.
He's just saying. So,
Oh, see the big
You have
I
a
know,
thumbs up.
You live in
From
town.
Kobe.
All right.
all right, so
Make a motion to close the public hearing. Try again.
second. Do I hear, all in favor?
Aye.
Make a motion to recommend
Amend.
public hearing or
Zoning amendment.
bylaws 22889 and.
No, 23889,
Oh, sorry, did I get the
yeah,
numbers
and 23890.
wrong? Thanks, Greg.
That's right.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, I forgot about closing it. Okay. Anybody else? Nothing? Anybody else? Any comment, question? No? No? All right, good. Well, thank you for everybody. Make a motion to adjourn?
Thank you for participating in the
Yes,
EC.
thank you.